Welcome to the Working Mumma podcast, a show that provides real-world tips, tricks, and advice to all working mamas on how they can have a career, family, and hopefully one day break the glass ceiling. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Working Mumma podcast, where we deep dive each week into the lives of working mums, exploring the highs, lows, and everything else in between. Today's episode is particularly special because I'm actually going to take a moment to reflect on a year of growth, both personally and professionally. Reason being, it's easy to get caught up in the hustle. But you know what? Sometimes the most profound insights come when we pause and also look back. I want to say that this year, every year seems to be, a big year. I was actually on the reflection with friends the other day of, sometimes it's the worst year possible and then something else, comes in. But I'd say that personally, I've probably had one of the biggest personal growth years of my life, that I've really noticed profound growth. And that's what I also want to talk to you about today. So when we're looking back on the year that we've had, a few things that you can, just from the outset, as we're discussing here, and, take a chance to get a pen and a paper and just think about what has gone well. And I'll go through that shortly. For me, what hasn't gone well, but also what have you really liked and what's brought you joy and happiness in the year? And the answer to number 3 about joy and happiness is probably not going to be the same as number 1 about what has been the best part of the year. I know that, personally for me, if I have to answer those questions, what's gone well, from my corporate gig, I've had a promotion. I've had some great experiences from a working mama perspective. The podcast has gone really well. And definitely getting my brand out there around Working Mumma and, having some TV appearances, that's been something that has been really good. Definitely on the challenge side, definitely time of being able to try and do everything that I want to do has certainly been up there. And certainly a challenge in the last 6 months for myself personally has also been around my self-care. And one of those things for me is about being able to go for a run. I was really good in the first half of the year. I've been able to run every week, every fortnight, and I fit that in when I work from home. And the second half of the year, I think because of winter and a few other things, it just fell by the wayside. And I have to say, I think upon reflection, my mental health personally was much better in the first half of the year, I think, because I was getting out and exercising in that way. I felt a bit more sluggish in the second half of the year. So for me, it's something that I really has been a bit of a challenge. But then what have I really enjoyed? What has really brought me, a lot of joy for this year? For me, that answer is different to number 1. And the biggest part that has brought me joy is actually by probably taking hold of my inner self and the stories that I'm telling myself, and also my personal confidence. Yes, I may appear on the outside of, look, yep, she may appear confident and things like that. But there's also, my inner me, there's a hell of a lot of imposter syndrome, a hell of a lot of personal doubt at times and questioning myself. Yes, I'm sharing a lot here. But it's just one of those things. And I think by working on that, it has made a profound impact on my personal outlook and also the way that I look at myself. And in that, I haven't done it alone. I have, first of all, I did the Odette Barry Hack Your Own PR course, which was the start of all this, because she really gets, it's not just about learning PR. It goes so much deeper than that. And that really started to make me go, well, what do I stand for? What's my unique positioning? And yeah, I did have probably a bit of a freak out of like, I don't know what I stand for and what is Working Mumma and everything else like that. Then at the same time, I was doing a free webinar with someone, and then another person who I knew, she was also on it, and I was asking some questions, and then her and I started this discussion offline. This is AJ Davis, and she's a mindset coach. And look, complete truth, probably 12 months ago, if someone said to me about mindset, and I didn't realize how profound an impact it can be by working on your mindset. And I have to say, it has been just honestly life-changing. I did, I think, 4 sessions with her, and that just totally changed it. She kind of gave me the bit of the rah-rah pump up, but also just that reality check. When I said, yeah, this is just me, she said to me, do not just say it's just you. And she goes, hold on to who you are and be proud of it. And there's so much about what we worked on is that has had a massive impact in the second half of the year. And certainly the stories that I'm telling myself, like even a couple of weeks ago, when I was about to go on the Today Show, and I was thinking, why am I doing this? Why do I have this? Why am I talking about this? And I then thought, no, it's the stories I'm telling myself. You have earned this. You've proven yourself through other appearances. You can do this. And then off the back of that, then it led to something else. And again, it's just those internal storytelling and coming back to some of those, really basic principles about what she told me. I have to say it had a profound impact. Whilst I was working with AJ, a job at my corporate job came up, and I literally was ringing our head of recruitment to say to him, no, I'm not going to do it. I know someone else going for it. I'm not going to do it. And then he said to me, Karina, that's pretty career limiting. And also, come on, just put your resume in, just never know what happens. And also at the same time, I think I'd said to AJ, I'm not going to, she's like, Karina, you've got to go for it. Just put your hat in the ring and just see what happens. And look, one thing led to another. I prepared for that interview like I've never prepared for anything for in my life. And that was because of the confidence that I'd got. And also I have to say, going for a job, oh my goodness, it can sometimes be quite soul-wrenching, but at the same time, it can also be quite a good reflection process to remind yourself of, oh yeah, I've done so many good things and look at what I've achieved in my career. And that's also what I took out of actually preparing for that interview. I was reflecting going, and this is, mind you, in the middle of this, real imposter syndrome, personal sort of mental side of things that I was going through. That also made me go, no, Karina, you've actually done some really good things. You have, done X, Y, Z projects and had some really fantastic outcomes and the like. And so then walking into that job interview, when they were asking me questions, I had the response ready to go. And I got the feedback of saying, Karina, not many people prepare for an internal interview that way. Everyone just takes it assumed. And I was like, well, I didn't want to assume anything. And so that's the way that I prepared for it. And mind you, I've been with my corporate job for 13 years, but the people that are interviewing me have really only known me for probably about 4 years. So they don't really know everything that I'd done prior. And that was a great interview. Then I ended up getting the job just because of my performance and, obviously earned the role. I did have some challenges of, am I the right person for this? A bit of imposter syndrome. But I got backed. I got supported by, the senior management team. I got really good support and also acknowledgement. And then from an industry perspective, I have to say, it's so different when you get a job promotion and how people respond to you. But that really gave me that confidence boost that I was probably needing and looking for at the time. And if I hadn't, I don't believe, done that inner work probably 2 months prior around that self-belief, I don't think I would have performed as well in the interview. So I'm not saying you necessarily have to go out and get a mindset coach, but I have to say, do some of the work on recognizing, if you're not feeling right in yourself, recognize maybe what that might be. But I have to say, often it's about the confidence factor. It's also about the inner stories that we're telling ourselves. And I have to say, as I said at the start, this is probably one of the biggest things I have learnt, in my life so far. And look, this year's certainly been as well a roller coaster of emotions. I've turned 40. I've had a milestone birthday in June, and I've never really attached too much importance around age. But I have to say that this number hit particularly differently, and it really triggered that reflective process. and really made me ponder as well at one point, where am I in my life journey? Am I where I wanted to be in my career? Am I where with family and kids and everything else like that? It's only natural that we set ourselves goals, and sometimes they're very visual, public goals. Other times it's sometimes our subconscious of, look, this is where we're sitting, this is where I'd like to be, and the like. So that for me, having a milestone birthday, it really is at times that line in the sand of, look, okay, how have my 30s gone? Honestly, my 30s were, I've had some of the worst moments of my life. For example, terminating a pregnancy for medical reasons. And honestly, that was the hardest thing I and my husband had to do, and I think I'll ever do in my life. But I've also had my best moments. I've had, birthed Earthside 2 beautiful boys. I've got married, and, definitely have some great holidays and things like that. And for me, that's a real highlight. So I probably had my best moments and my worst moments all in the space of a decade. But at the same time, then from a work perspective, I was like, oh my goodness, where am I? What am I doing? And kind of a little bit, what is that next step? And so that's when I was thinking about, what is that role? I really also realized, I have finished having kids. And so as a working mum, I'm going, okay, right, I finished that phase. That door is, on having kids is closed. So what next? I've got pretty good support around me. My husband and I definitely manage the juggle. We try and do it as evenly as possible. He's also had a really big year in his job. And so it's one of those things that you're just like, right. And I kind of knew that once I'd also mentally, before I'd had kids, I kind of knew that I wanted to get to this level. And then after kids, okay, what's next? I don't just want to be in that same role, forever. And that's where I think in that mid-year in June, it's really that reflective. And it was funny how I was going through this, mental, sort of not really mental, but this personal confidence crisis a bit. I was then also going for a new job, and then I was turning 40, all around the space at the same time. But it was, as they say, sometimes it's that perfect storm that you then navigate and look forward out of. And I have to say, I've kept in touch with AJ since, and I've sent her messages at different points to say I couldn't have done this without that support along the way. And my biggest message to you is, and probably my biggest takeaway for this year is to back myself and to believe in myself. And I had a sit down chat with my manager, who's the CEO, and she said, Karina, I don't know what you've done this year, but I can tell your confidence in your role has just, you just keep going from strength to strength. And I was like, I said, I actually spoke to someone, and that she goes, keep doing whatever you're doing. And I was like, okay. And so that really also for me validated that probably at times when I may not have spoken up because I didn't have that confidence in myself to actually also have that self-belief. Whereas now I'm happier to speak up to myself. I'm going to back my decisions. And I know that, look, I'm doing it in the best place, coming from the best place possible. And I keep doing that. And so those positive messages are coming out of going, okay, right, I've done something. Yes, I've had positive feedback. Okay, I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to keep backing myself. So I have to say to you, if you listen, when you're listening to this, just please, if you are doubting yourself, look for those little stories, those little bits of evidence that show you when you back yourself, or, you can do it. And if you're lacking in confidence, find some stories that can help you out of that moment. So what are those 5 things, say if you're returning back into work, one of those 5 really good examples about when you were having a really good time at work and you were, really nailing it. If you're already working, having a bit of that self-doubt, what are those examples about doing it? What are those also stories that you're telling yourself, and where are they coming from? And I have to say, do some of that work, and you'll, try and debunk some of those personal myths. We often say, tell me a story and overcome it with our kids. Of no, you'll be fine. You can do it. Try and tell those same stories back to yourself. And I have to say, it's definitely one of the biggest things that I have to say has really shaped me for this year, and also really empowered me both personally as professionally. And I think, imposter syndrome is certainly one of those things that we really struggle with. we think, as working mums, we should probably be grateful for going back to work and grateful for having a job. Heck no, you deserve that. You've worked probably 10, 15, 20 years already in your career. You deserve to be where you are. And so just back yourself, know where you are. And I have to say that, you really, it's quite powerful when you're going through that journey. It's also uncomfortable. And one thing I've also learned now is that when you're starting to be uncomfortable, say in a new role or a new experience, that's actually not a negative. It is so much more about personal growth. And so by being uncomfortable is actually a sign of growth. It sounds really weird and a little bit uneasy, but if you're leveling up, you're actually going to go through, just like as our kids, they're, starting to walk. It's just they're going to take one step at a time. They're not going to get it straight away. It's going to be a bit uncomfortable for them. They're going to have to learn how to balance. But as soon as they can start to do those first few steps, before we know it, they're running. And the same with you. The more that you can work on your confidence, ignore those negative stories, find those positive stories, hold on to it. Or even if that is creeping into you, like as I said, I had it the other week when I was about to go on TV, had these stories creep in and going, what am I? Who am I to do this? And I was like, no, Karina, I caught myself. I literally caught those thoughts that were happening. And I was like, no, I'm not going to listen to you. Instead, I'm going to listen to the positive stories of I've been asked, they've approached me, they've seen me before. This is the reason why. And I had to hold on to that and really work hard of ignoring those imposter syndrome type stories. And I think lessons have been really abundant in the wake of these experiences that I've had this year. And some have been, quite enlightening, and others have certainly been challenging. And it's been, I have to say, quite profound in the way that I've actually come through this growth. And also one of the things of being on TV and the whole process of getting approached. And I had someone actually asked me, would you do it? And I had this one moment of, no, I can't do it. I won't be available. But then another part of me then goes, no, Karina, just say yes. Like, what is the harm in saying yes? And that's what I did. And so then I'm rewriting that internal story. And I have to say, before I knew it, the next morning at 7:15, I was appearing on national TV talking about the topic of childcare. But I have to say as well, it was a testament to the power of saying yes, but also embracing the unknown. I'd never been on TV before. I had no idea what it's like to be in a studio, to be staring down the barrel of a TV camera and going, I don't know whether to look left or right and what's actually going on. But I have to say that also this experience has reinforced the notion that positive thinking can open doors to, I have to say, places that I never imagined. I thought the first time I was on TV was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing, such an experience and such an honor. The next time was such a different brief that I'd got to be on there, and it was like, right, they kind of know what you got to do. The next time, literally 2 minutes before I was about to go on the Today Show, the computer died. And I had to quickly use my phone, and it was, talk about stress just before you go on, again, national TV. And it was just like, oh my goodness, but kind of tried to hold it together. And before I know it, I'm getting messages from friends saying, well done. But again, it's one of those things of just, I didn't allow myself to think too long. I just went for it. And I was like, right, I'm backing myself. I'm just going for it. So I have to say that the overarching lesson for this year has been 100% to back myself unapologetically. I don't have to answer to anyone except for myself. And I have to say it's also about drowning out the negative stories and reminding myself that, yes, I can have a part-time executive role, be a dedicated mum, run a business, and navigate the world of media and everything else that goes on with it. And also run a podcast and network and do everything else, and everything else that it is, and be daughter, mum, sister, wife, everything. It's also about embracing positivity and recognizing that often we are the sum of the stories that we choose to believe, which I think is so true. So as I conclude this introspective journey, and I have to say it's been quite open and honest, and I've shared it all with you. Yes, there have been some tears, but there've also been a lot of highs. And I have to say that 12 months ago, if I'd said this is what the journey of this year was going to be, I would never have guessed it. Am I thankful for backing myself and investing in myself? 100%. And I probably wasn't 100% believer of, to an extent, of some of those bigger ticket prices. But particularly, you know, Hack Your Own PR has just paid for itself over time, so many times. Working with AJ, but then also working on myself, and that is priceless. And that's something that, you know, you can do all the training in the world, but you've actually got to go away and implement it. And that is what's so critical, if you've got to set about that at the time. And so I really, you know, as a listener, I really urge you and take a moment for your reflections. And I've been thinking about this a lot over the last couple of weeks. And so I've really been thinking about, how do I want to share this with you? And yes, it's probably not as structured as what I'd like it to be, but I'm just being completely open and honest with you. And so you take a moment to reflect. As I said at the start, think about what's gone well. Think about what hasn't gone well, but also think about what you've really enjoyed, what's lit you up. And then also there might be an element there of what's made you sad and what's made you unhappy. And in each of these elements, there's always going to be a learning. So if there's been a challenge or something that hasn't gone right, there's a way in that of going, okay, what is that? And what do you then need to change or modify into the next year? So with that, you know, also think about, what are the stories that you're telling yourself with each of them? You know, that I'm sure the negative stories are probably going to be a lot, but also try and look for those highlights, look for those really positive stories, because that will also be what you can hold on to for the next year. And also the negative ones might be, what do you need to flip? How can you change that narrative around? What are those stories that you're telling yourself? For example, you know, for me, no, you can't go on TV. What are you to talk about that? But then I flip that around of, look, I've been asked, I haven't stuffed up yet. They've liked me. They've asked me back a number of times. Okay, I must be doing all right. You know, certainly the stories of, like, even I've sometimes doubted myself with the podcast, but then I then have feedback. I have really positive engagement around it. I love talking to the guests. I'm going, no, okay, back yourself. So that's also here, you know, what stories are you telling yourself, and how are they propelling you forward, or how are they holding you back? And also, I have to say, remember that you are capable of more than you think. And I'll go back to what I said earlier. We are often the sum of the stories that we choose to believe. So, Mama, I really would like to also take a moment and say thank you so much for listening in 2023. This is the last solo episode for the year. Next week, we're going to do a pre-recorded episode, but with a guest, but I just want to say a massive thanks. You've got no idea that, you know, if you've got to this point of listening, how much it means. And I honestly love bringing the podcast to you. I've always had an aim that I want to just pay it forward to one other mum at least, to help them stay inspired, to have the belief and the narrative that, yes, you can work and have a career. You know, you do it on your terms, and that's what's the most important part about it as well. We will be opening doors to the Working Mumma Village next year. It probably will take a slightly different form and actually a bit more of a program to help you through it, and we all go through the journey together. But also, if today's episode has resonated with you, I'd love to share this on social media. And don't forget to subscribe so you can actually hear about more empowering stories. And I'd also love to hear about what your suggestions are for future topics. I'd love, or if you've got a guest that I'd love to interview. So that would be absolutely amazing. So I have to say, Mama, take some time out, either with, say, maybe a nice glass of champagne, or maybe with a coffee, and, you know, just reflect on, you know, what's gone well, how you can improve for next year, what would you like to improve on, and also what's made you happy. That's what we need to also hold on to. So a massive thanks and congratulations to you for everything you have achieved throughout the year, both personally as well as professionally. And until next time, Keep thriving, working mamas, and have an amazing day. Thank you for listening to the Working Mumma podcast. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcast catcher. Please also feel free to contact me on any of the Working Mumma social channels. Remember, Mumma is MUMMA, or website www.workingmumma.com.au. I would appreciate you to share this podcast with friends and colleagues, especially those that are parents managing the juggle. And I would really appreciate if you had to take the time out to leave a review of the podcast. Thank you, and see you next time. Have a great week.